Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. So today, so I've been having something like on my mind for a while, like a specific part of the Old Testament. Like, you know, read so many times, but like for some reason, like this time it just clicked. So it's in the book of Deuteronomy. So it's the 5th book in the Old Testament. So like if you start from the beginning, there's Genesis, then Exodus, then there's Leviticus, Numbers, and then comes Deuteronomy. So Deuteronomy is like basically the end of Moses' life. And what he's trying to do is, like, they came out of Egypt, like they were lost in the wilderness for so long in Shafi'i, and like God is telling him, okay, it's about time that you guys enter. Okay, there's a new generation now, like all the people that like rebelled against me and like in the wilderness and all that stuff. And now there's a new generation, but it's time for you to go to the land that I promised you. Hello. So what Moses is trying to do here, before, like he's like handing in, like, what do you call this, like the baton. So he's handing it over to somebody who's going to come after him, so Joshua. But before he does that, like he wants to recap everything that happened to them. Like, so he's like, he gathers like all the people of Israel, and then he starts the recap. Okay, so basically this is our story, this is how we came out of Egypt, this is the promise that God had given us. And like to our forefathers in Shafi'i and so on and so forth, and like we went to the wilderness of Sinai, your fathers rebelled against God, and like he gave us this, he gave us that, he promised us this, and he promised us that, and so on and so forth. And now, like, and he tells them, like, he gave us these laws and these commandments, and he told us to do this. And كل حاجة. So it's a full recap of the past 40 years in one book. But then, like, حاجة في النص كده, and like the title of it was The Essence of the Law. So basically, since he's recapping and summarizing everything, he tells them, he's speaking to the people of Israel, and he tells them something very simple. He tells them, so it's in Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12. And now Israel, what does the Lord your God require of you? But to fear the Lord, your God, to walk in all his ways, to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, which I command you today, for your good. So basically, like he's summarizing everything in one sentence. What does God require of you? He requires you to keep his commandments. Sorry, so take it in order. So, fear the Lord. So fear the Lord your God. Okay, walk in his ways. Love him. Serve him with all your heart and all your soul. And keep his commandments and statutes. So 5 things. So let's try to explore this a bit. When he says, like, you know, the Lord your God requires you to fear him, what does that mean?
Fear what he thinks of you? Or like fear what he thinks of you, or?
Fear what he thinks of you. Elaborate.
Like basically, like you have to take his commandments and you have to compare them to your life.
Okay.
And then, according to that, you'll know like if you're doing right by God.
Okay, but like, so, okay, yeah, it makes sense, yeah. But let's make it more simple. So, like, when he says fear the Lord your God, like, does he actually mean like to be afraid of him?
Respect.
You know, so okay, some sort of respect, right? Okay, again, so it's not like, you know, being afraid and like going hiding somewhere because, you know, God is there, you know. But it's not that. That's not the point. But fear, as in you respect him. Okay, that's one thing. Plus, in very practical like means, you see God in front of you at every action, at every moment, at every second of your life. So basically, I consider that God, well, it's not just considering, it's a true fact, you know, he's there at every moment of my life, okay? Whether like I'm sitting somewhere in my room and nobody sees me, or like I'm speaking to this person or that person and like I'm using foul language, Or like I'm at work and I'm trying to hurt somebody, like one of my colleagues, because like they're so dumb, like and like they're making our life so horrible, so like we have to do something about it. Whatever it is, any circumstance that I go through, every second of my life, God is there. So in the back of my mind, I need to be aware of this fact, and then build my decisions based on that. So let's take two examples that they're going to clarify the picture of it. Okay, so we all know Joseph, right? So from the Old Testament, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Joseph. Okay, what happened to Joseph? His brothers were envious of him, and then they ended up like selling him to like some caravan that was going to Egypt. And he had a very he was like le chouchou, but then he had a very tough life because of his brothers. And then he ended up going to Egypt, being away from his family, and he went to prison. It was very rough. But at some point, he was serving in this guy, like Potiphar, And then his wife was lusting after Joseph. So this guy, this Egyptian guy, he has his wife, okay? And Joseph is a servant in their house. And then the wife is lusting for Joseph. So once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, every day, she's persistent. And she's come lay with me, Ta'ala, come lay with me. At the end, she grabbed him and she's like, yo, So he just he left everything, his clothes and everything, and just ran away. But if you think about it for a bit, for us it sounds normal. It's okay, we know that this is wrong. But back in the days, nobody told him that it's not good to commit adultery. There was no commandment. The commandments came at the time of Moses, so about 450 years later. Okay? So how did he know that this is not right? There's no written commandment. Because he feared God. Because he saw God, he understood that his presence was everywhere, every moment, every second. He was there. Okay? So, this thing that I'm doing, does it please God? I know, from the story of my fathers and my forefathers, that doesn't click. Okay? So, I fear God. I'm going to respect that. I'm going to run away from my life. Another example. Again, from the Old Testament, for some reason. I don't know why. But, so there's this prophet called Elisha. Okay? So there's Elijah, and then after him comes Elisha. Okay? So Elisha had a disciple called Gehazi. Doesn't matter what the name is. But basically, so they're Israelites, and then comes the king of Syria, who's called Naaman. So this guy, this king of Syria, he had leprosy, and he was Bahdil Khalis. So he goes to the king of Israel and he's can you do something about it? I'm sick and I hear that you guys are amazing and you have an amazing God. And the king of Israel is I'm not God, okay? Don't ask that stuff from me. But there's a prophet, Elisha. Go see him and ask him for whatever you want. So Naaman goes to Elisha, and then Elisha tells him, just if you want to be healed, go wash yourself in the river Jordan. At first he's not convinced, and he's yeah, we have better rivers in Syria, why do I have to wash in this, Tira? But then, people convince him, and then he does it, and eventually, he gets healed, okay? So he goes back to Elisha and tells him, I was healed based on your word, and I want to give you, so much gifts, I want to give you, gold and silver and whatever, But then Elisha refuses to take anything from him. Flash forward, New Testament, Christ is talking to his disciples and then he tells them, no. Freely you have received, freely give. Okay? That's, I don't know how many, 800, 700 years later. Okay? So that commandment of freely you have given, freely you have received, freely give, that wasn't there. How did Elisha know it? I'm not going to take gifts for something that God did. He just, he's the one who's working, he's just a servant. Nobody told him. But fear the Lord your God. He's present, he's there, he's the one who's active, he's the one who's working. It's not. Make sense? Yeah. Okay. So that's point number 1. After that, he tells him, after you fear the Lord, you're gonna walk in his ways. sounds very broad, right? No?
Can you say it again?
So we're reading like a few so 2 verses from Deuteronomy, chapter 10, 12 and 13. So basically, like, Moses is trying to do like a full recap of everything that has happened ever since they left Egypt. And then he tells them, like, this verse is basically like a summary of everything that is required of you by God. So the first thing was, you're gonna fear the Lord your God. Okay? And then after that, he tells the people of Israel, and in this case, you can actually move Israel, put your name. Okay? What is required of you? What is required of Amir? Fear the Lord your God, plus walk in his ways. What are his ways? And what does not walking in his ways look like? That's what we talk.
So you're asking what's one thing he's doing?
Yeah, what does that mean? Yeah, and he's supposed, like, you were sitting there and like Moses is telling you that stuff. Okay, what do I do?
Copy his actions. Copy his actions.
Copy his actions. I like that. So, explain.
So basically do as he did. Act the same way he acted when certain things happen. You take example from that.
Okay, so basically, like, use this person as a role model. Okay,
Right.
for instance. Okay, that's one good thing. Yeah, I like that. What else? Think of like practical stuff. So just elaborate on that point. You know, in the Song of Solomon, okay, at some point it says, so I can't remember the verse exactly, but it's something along the lines of, if you do not know the way, walk in the footsteps of the flock. Okay, so basically he's telling that lost soul or person. Okay, if you don't know the way, if you don't know what to do, where to go, okay, just follow the footsteps of the flock. So there's a flock that's walking, they're going somewhere, you know, the like green pastures. If you don't know the way, follow the flock. Okay, so if we take it like to like a practical sense, so like us, what do we do? This is equivalent to saying, if I were you, I would have a relationship with saints. And not only because, you know, like it's fun to have saints, you know, they intercede for you and like do, you know, miracles, and like this saint is like good for finding stuff, and this saint is good for finding a lost kid, and this saint is good for whatever struggles you have. Okay, that's good. But that's not the point of having a relationship with a saint. Having a relationship with a saint is basically this. If you don't know the way, like I want to walk in the ways of God, okay, what do I do? Okay, there's a flock, follow the flock. So for instance, Amba Ram, like what's his main characteristic? Bishop of Fayum. Like, you know, we say in commemoration of the saints. Generosity, you know? Like he was always whatever it is, you know, like anything. Just people like would come and give him money, you know, this is for the church, whatever. And then like 5 seconds later, somebody would come and like, I need £5, and it's like, you know, that's all the money he got. Just take the £5. And that was his life. Okay, that was the focus of his life. But if I, for instance, like if this is something that I like, okay, this is something I can follow. I can build this relationship with Amba Abraham. I like that. I want to be like that, you know. And I take him as an intercessor. Okay. For instance, somebody who's like, I'm struggling with sin, like I'm not able to repent properly, whatever, you know. I can take as a role model, Saint Moses. Saint Moses the Strong, okay? So, follow in the footsteps of the flock. So, you pick a role model or a friend, a saintly friend, okay? And you put him in front of you or her in front of you, and then you just like say, okay, walking the ways of God, this is what it's supposed to be like. These guys knew what they were doing. Follow in the footsteps. But just an example of not following in the footsteps. You know, it's equivalent to saying like the minute we are baptized, it's as if God lays in front of us a Okay, so now you're baptized, we're, you've been adopted into my family. Okay, so I'm gonna lay this path in front of you. And it's not, I don't want you to confuse this with like, this is destined to happen. No, that's not what I'm saying. But there's like a nice path for you to walk in Kidda, okay? And I'm not saying necessarily that it's, like pink and fluffy and very nice. No. It could be very, very rough actually. And like Christ says it many times. Like the path is like very narrow, the gate's narrow, it's gonna be tough, you have to carry your cross. Okay? Sometimes like you have to make decisions that aren't easy. Nation. But then at the end of this path, the minute you're baptized, this path is laid, and then you have a crown that's waiting for you. So, if I'm walking in this way, but I lose focus, I don't see the crown that I'm going to, this crown that has my name on it, it's reserved for me, I can easily get distracted and like lose my way, okay? In any decision, like, like a decision that's related to work, مثلا, like I could have a job with an X amount of like money as a salary for like, and then like I get this option somehow of like, maybe a promotion or like moving to a different company or whatever it is for like an X amount of money that's more, If I think of it, practically, it's more money. My life's gonna be easier. I'm gonna be able to buy, the stuff that I want. It's gonna be easier on my like pocket. I'm gonna be able to pay my mortgage, my car lease, whatever it is. This is one way of thinking of it, but then if you want to keep your focus on your crown, there's another perspective that you need to look at. Is this new job going to take me away from church? Is this new job going to take me away from service? Is this new job going to, I'm going to be so exhausted at the end of the day, I'm just going to go home and like crash on my bed. Like there's no prayer, no reading, nothing. So, stuff like that, okay? So, as I'm walking in the path, if I lose focus, if I'm not concentrated on the crown that has my name on it, I'm going to be easily get distracted. So if you want to walk in the ways of the Lord, set your eyes on stuff. You set your eyes on role models, set your eyes on your crown. Just an example of, just remember from Synaxarium, like the story of the 40 saints of Sebastian. Okay, so it's a city, and these like 40 saints, they were getting martyred. So the way they were getting martyred is like actually, like they were drowning them in like freezing cold water. And then they gave them the option, there's like a nice bath, nice warm bath right next to it. So if you want to die, we're going to put here. We're going to put you in that freezing cold water. If you want to renounce Christ, there's a nice warm bath right next to it. So one of them couldn't continue and like jump out of the water into the warm bath. And as he was doing that, one of the soldiers who was like, guarding them, saw a crown that was like كده معلقة كده في الهواء. And it like just waiting, pending. So immediately, like when he saw this, that soldier confessed Christ and then jumped into the water, like took the crown. Okay? So stuff like that. So don't jump into the water, but like so keep your focus. There's a crown that has my name on it, reserved. That's what I'm going towards. This is walking the way. All right, the next part, I think of it as the fun part. So he's asking us, each one of us, to love him, and then I think like they're related to them. So love him, and to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Actually, like in the translation here, if you read it in Arabic, the word serve is ta'bud, so actually to worship. Okay, so it's not just serve as in service, but like serve as in worship. Like your whole life of worship. So I like to think of these two things as related. Why? Because I will not be able to worship God. I will not be able to follow in many footsteps. I will not be able to fear him. I will not be able to do anything if I don't have love. What is love? Love is something that's genuine. It's something that comes from your inner person, you know. It's not an appearance. It's something from the heart. Okay? It's something from the inside. So if the inside isn't right, if the inside isn't, you know, genuine, if I'm not getting this genuine emotion, okay, then everything else that's going to follow, all that facade that's outside, it doesn't really matter. You know, it doesn't matter what you do. There's no love, it serves you nothing. So, actually, like a friend of mine had shared like a sermon, you know, it's like one of these sermons with like music in the background, like Shafi. So, in that sermon, Abuna was saying something very nice. If I want to genuinely love God, okay, then the first thing I need to do is to uncover my heart. What does uncover my heart mean? It means being honest with myself. If I am going to sit here and say, no, I come to church a few times a week, I confess every now and then, I take communion, you know, I have Abuna as a friend, I have some friends that go to church. Okay, that's very good. But am I there? Like, did I make it? Yes? Do I have a relationship with Christ? Well, I put it in كده, you know, it's secondary. If I'm not honest with myself, if I don't, you know, say it as it is, if I don't say that, you know, like if I speak to Christ and I tell him, you know what, I've evaluated myself, and then like I found out that all that stuff that I say is bogus. I say that I love you. I say that actually, you know, like I want to be with you. Like I want to live that life that's abundant and like saintly and holy. All that stuff is bogus. If I don't mean it, it's bogus. It doesn't matter what I do. So the first step to love God is to be honest with yourself. Uncover your heart. What is in there? Is what's in there my focus, like on Christ, or my focus on something else? طيب. And actually, like, as I was listening to the sermon, like, a few hours later, I went to Tim's, I met somebody, and like, he's, you know, like, I'm like, yeah, how's it going, Shafi? And he's like, you know, Amir, I'm not gonna lie to you, you know, like, my priorities in life are, the first thing he said was, my priorities in life are God, family, and then studies. I'm like, and then like a few seconds later, he's like, Amir, I'm not gonna lie to you. My priorities in life are my studies, my family, and then God comes at the end. In the back of my mind, I had so much respect for that person. Because he laid it out as it is. And that's the first step. If you want to fix something, you admit that it's broken. If you want to fix your relationship with Christ, if you want to fix this void that's in your heart, you got to admit that there is a void. You got to admit that everything you're doing does not have the love that is requested. Like, do I stop there? If you stop there, then there's a big problem. It's gonna lead you to depression. But if you admit that there's something wrong, and then you ask for help, this is when things start to happen. If I admit that, you know, like, I have this sin that I can get rid of it, you know, like, I just love it, you know, like, it gives me satisfaction, you know. If I don't say this to Christ, and I tell him, but you know what, like, you know, I hear from all these people around me that it's so much nicer with you, that it's so much nicer following you, that it's so much, like, you know, it's like so liberating to be with you. Like, and I want this. This is what I want. But I'm not able to. And I'm asking for your help. You know? If I'm not honest with myself in saying this, nothing's gonna happen. But the minute I say it, that's when God starts to work. And like the grace of God can like fix anything that's broken. But if like if I'm putting together, like, you know, everything's fine, facade, it's not gonna help. So this is loving God. Genuine, honest, true. And then what's gonna stem from this is that you're gonna worship with all your heart and with all your soul. And then just I recall something to the from Abuna Shoy Kemp. So Abuna Shoy was in love with something called the cross. Any sermon, any person he would talk to, anything he would say was related to the cross. Like, أي موضوع, he would like bring it back to the cross. Veuve pas. So at some point, like, and this is like in his memoirs. So he's saying like this lady came and like she was confessing to him and she tells him, Abuna, like I'm having so much trouble with like my mother-in-law, and like مش عارف ايه بتعمل ايه وتسوي ايه, and like, she's giving me a hard time, and like I just can't love her, and like she kept complaining for like an hour, and then at the end, when I'm sure he's like, do you have a cross at home? She's like, yeah, if a Christian has one. So he's like, okay, I want you to say that same stuff, you know, like your complaints are legit. I want you to go complain to him, just like, you know, like put the cross on the wall somewhere, and just like sit under the cross and complain to him. So he's like, you bet I'm gonna do it. So she goes back home, and then like she puts the cross, and like she does as Abuna told her. And then like, she just looks at the cross, and then it stops there. And then she goes back to Abuna, and she's like, Abuna, like, I did what you told me. I did the first part of it. But then when I sat under the cross at the feet of Christ, I just couldn't say it. So this is something from a book, Meshi. Let's take something more practical. I personally know someone, you know, they were living their life a certain way. And like, you know, God was present, but not necessarily like in that sense. Right? So I have a secondary good. But like, after everything changed, you know, like you go ask him, what happened? And like the answer was very simple. You know, one day, well, it's not one day, it's like, so Passion Week, you know, Passion Week is best class so like, you know, the mood is nice in church, stuff like that. And like, there's like a big picture of Christ with the crown of thorns and like his eyes. And he's like, I just looked at his eyes. And then everything stopped. So it's not just Keren Keren, it's true. So, you want to love God, you want to serve Him, worship Him with all your heart, with all your soul, okay? One thing you could do is, like, you know, like it says in the fraction, but when I was praying it, I think Sunday, it says, portray His wounds before you, okay? When I see this in front of me, when I have this picture in front of me of God, you know, creator of the universe, omnipotent, He can do whatever He wants, but because He loves me, personally, me, He left all His glory in heaven. He came down. He dwelt as a homeless man, very poor. You know, He was born in a barn. And like, before His passion, you know, like He knows that like, this guy's gonna deny Him, this guy's gonna betray Him, these guys are gonna spit in His face. But He washed the feet of His disciples. And then John 15, He calls them, I have called you beloved. Called you friends. You're no longer my servants. If you keep my commandments, I call you friends. And like بالعربي, like the translation, دعوتكم أحبائي, my beloved. بالبلدي كده حبايبي. And then He's crucified, and like it goes on and you know, so on and so forth. Like all this for me, and I'm like busy and like, you know, this person like قالت عليا كلمة وحشة. And this person, like, he looks at me like, you know, يبص لي كده, and like, he has bad, مش عارف ايه, intentions. And like, عندي مشاكل في الشغل, عندي مشاكل مع الشخص ده, like, you know, like, I can't love him. Seriously. Portray his wounds in front of you. Okay? I'm not saying this is to everybody, like, me included, yeah. But like, everything becomes so banal, you know, in front of the cross. And like, Abuna Shoy, like, he lived this, and like, that's why he was so, like, out of his mind when he spoke about the cross. So, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul. Keep the commandments of the Lord and His statutes. That's the last thing. What's the difference between a commandment and a statute? I'm asking you because I didn't know that until like 2 hours ago. Is it the same thing? أحكامه وفرائضه. It doesn't. يعني not Merriam-Webster, but sure.
Everything not passed by a legislative body. Statute is a written law passed by a legislative body.
Okay, that's what, that's commandment.
Oh, and biblical use, it's a law or decree made by a sovereign or by God.
What is this?
Statute.
Statute, okay.
So it's
So it actually explains it. So a commandment is something that God is asking you to do, and you have to struggle to live it. Like, for example, love your enemies. Okay? Love your enemies is a commandment. I have to struggle to follow it. Okay? And like, there's sometimes that I'm going to fall, but then there's sometimes I'm going to be successful, and the struggle goes on as we live. Okay? A statute is like, there's no struggle, but you just have to do it. Okay? Like what? Like communion. Okay? When Christ says, "For my body is food indeed, and my blood is drink indeed," okay? He's not kidding. Okay? He means it. This is a statute. And if he says that if you do not eat my body and drink my blood, you have no life in you, and like you have no like portion in me, like you can't enter the kingdom of heaven, then this is a statute. Then there's no kidding around with communion. Okay? So a commandment, I struggle to do it. You know, like there's a struggle. If I fail, like restart, go back to zero, restart. A statute, like it's pass or fail. If I fail, like I failed. If I pass, you pass. Okay? So that's the difference. So like لما ربنا يقول لي مثلا unless you are born of water and spirit, i.e. unless you're baptized, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. And like there's, like we can explain this, like, you know, like it's gonna take forever, but like that's not the point. بس خلاص طالما قال كده يبقى ما يجيش حد يقول مثلا يعني it's okay, مهم القلب, you know, like you don't need baptism, like يعني it's just like كده تمثيلية, but like المهم قلبك مع ربنا. No, that's not what he said. This is a statute. You don't mess around with it. You follow it. A commandment, نتعب شوية. You carry your cross, and then you follow in the footsteps of the flock. Okay? There's a commandment that you have to follow. Love your enemies. Pray for those who spitefully use you and abuse you. Shafi. Nation. This is a commandment. I have to follow it. I'm going to struggle. So, just to recap, Deuteronomy, a book of like summarizing everything, about everything in the Old Testament. And then there's like these two verses that come in Deuteronomy 10, verses 12 and 13. What it is that is required of Israel. So Moses is speaking to the people of Israel. But again, I can take it personally. So he's talking to me. And now, Amir, what does the Lord your God require of you? Fear the Lord, your God. Walk in all his ways. Love him and to serve the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, to keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, which I command you today for your good. Any questions?
Before we pray, I'm just going to say something quickly. So, back in the days, we used to have our meeting in the balcony of St. George.